I want to cover a couple things I forgot in the last video, and then cover a couple other new things that are important that I didn't cover that happened in San Francisco. You know, I said that I'm not going to review every point of my blog, and how could I possibly? There's so many things there. I'm just trying to cover the major points. And I don't want to miss anything or get anything wrong. You see now I changed my camera angle. You know, I'm using the camera that's attached to my computer, so I had to raise it up to get it up to about where my forehead is. I thought that angle was weird where I was looking down before. This is slightly more professional, but you can see my rice cooker in the background that they stuck me with. You know, they were doing me this great favor and giving me a rice cooker. But I'll tell you, you can boil water and pasta in it, and I've kind of just whipped up a little dish that's very simple that I make, and some nights I nail it so well that it's like something that came off of Grace's table. And all I put in it, the sauce is use a third of a pound of macaroni, sometimes different kinds, sometimes fettuccine, sometimes penne, mostaccioli. I got some rigatoni over here, thin spaghetti, whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, there is a difference, but the one that probably works best with is penne, I'd say. Because for those heavier noodles, you need a heavier sauce, I think. So it works good with stuff that isn't so dense, which would be like more of a tubular noodle than like a long strand. So what I use for it is I use a third of a pound of pasta, and as I said, penne is probably the best. And I use just like a splash of water, maybe a tablespoon of oil, salt to taste, and you kind of have to get it right. I don't measure it, and I don't get it right all the time. Just a dash of pepper. Too much pepper will ruin it. And then I add some parsley to it. And that's it. And butter. And butter, like maybe a half a tablespoon of butter. You know, not too much. Too much butter will ruin it as well. It'll make you sick. Just a little bit of butter for flavor. And for a while there, I was putting some chicken bouillon in it too, but you know, I kind of dropped that because of the budget. But, on the nights when I nail it, it's like something that came off of Grace's table. It's really good. It's easy to make. So, you know, I don't have to make rice in that fucking rice cooker they gave me. Anyway, first I want to say that this is really important, and this is on my blog, so you can confirm it there. And I just forgot to mention it yesterday. When those three women had me on the floor, barely conscious, you know, and I was looking up at them and they were shouting at me. One of them said, "Do you want to be part of the revolution? It's a revolution of the mind." And I remember that just as clear as her saying, you know, it's going to get really bad. As a matter of fact, it was probably the clearest point of them all. I just forgot to mention it yesterday. And that absolutely was that incident. The other thing was, when my brother knocked me out with the asthma inhaler, when Jeff caught me, he didn't say he's so huge. He said, "He's heavy, Joe." You know, like, you know, he was explaining that he was having a hard time keeping me from hitting the floor. And I remember that very clearly, too. And part of the reason I know these memories are real are because of these details. You know, he didn't say he's so huge. He said he's heavy, Joe. I very, very specifically remember that. The other thing that I didn't mention was that when my brothers made a long list of cryptic comments to me that I wasn't supposed to remember, apparently. On that visit, it was probably the same visit. I think I visited him twice while I was living in Columbus. Maybe it was only once on Thanksgiving, so it would have been that visit. A lot of strange things happened. He said these knives are very sharp, which Christian Friend had also said. But the other comment that he made me out of the blue that I may not have ever put on the blog was he just said to me, he looked at me and goes, "You're in enemy territory." You know, and that all goes to the secret, non-physical, non-violent civil war. And the other thing they do is kind of suggesting to me by like movies and books, like they try to screw with me by, I always see Alfred Hitchcock things popping up online, like that guy who sat next to me at the library yesterday, and I got that good video of him like acting like an idiot, which is meant to be repulsive. When I visited my brother, not only did he suggest I watch Event Horizon, he also suggested I watch the Owen Wilson movie that is called Behind Enemy Lines or something to that effect. I forget which one it is. But that's how they keep it all secret. You know what I mean? There's little bits and pieces that you put together. He said to me, "You're in enemy territory," and one of a long list of cryptic comments. And he had me watch that Owen Wilson movie. So I thought it was important to mention those. And I also said that that list was complete, and obviously I forgot one that I'd mentioned in a previously video and I've written about on the blog, in which there were 3 guys there, and I think it was separate from all the incidents I mentioned in the last video, in which they said, you won't remember this conversation. And that's pretty much all I remember of that one. And my guess is they got me drunk, got me to sign something, and then said, you won't remember this conversation, and stuck me with a hypodermic or something. But I think it was all guys. There were 3 guys, I think. I'm guessing they were CIA. Might have been the same conversation when they goaded me into saying something bad about Carrie Plank, but I don't know for sure. Could be, though. Like I said, I'm not going to cover everything in my blog. That would be, there's no way I'm going to recreate that blog altogether. So I'm just going to cover some important points because for whatever reason, it seems to me that when I make a video, it's more effective than writing on my blog. Sometimes I think that the things I write on my blog, maybe there's nobody reading them. But apparently there's somebody watching these videos. Or maybe that's just part of the game to make me think that. Could be. I don't know. But anyway, there are 2 points I wanted to cover about some things that happened in San Francisco. And the first, most important one is the encounter I have with a guy named Victor Carrion, who is some faggot psychologist from Stanford. I ran into him at a bar here, and there were some other people in the crowd at this bar that night who made some strange comments to me. And I don't know who those guys were, but I'm not going to review what Victor did because he's just a nauseating sick fucker. But he absolutely is central to this whole thing. No doubt about it. He's like a child trauma psychologist from Stanford or something. And he's got to have a lot to do with it. Since I had Lonesome the Dog when I was a kid, and out here is where socialist, anti-American, gay brainwashing starts. I am convinced he must be central to the whole thing. And the other thing that I'll mention that I don't know if I may have mentioned briefly in another video, but since I'm trying to summarize here important events, I'll go ahead and mention it again. And that was when I had an encounter with some guys at the St. Francis Hotel Lounge who were associated with Zynga. And of course, Zynga is a gaming company that makes, like, what do they call it? Real life games or whatever they call it. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with it. I read a little bit about them. But there were about 5 or 6 people there. And they always bait me with some kind of commonality. And one, there was a girl who said she was from Ohio. Every seat at the bar was full except for the one next to her, which I've experienced in other times with another San Francisco incident with Angelique Fall again. But who said, what are you going to do about it? But anyway, at the night with the Zynga people, they did what they do. They know they've got you in this state where you're easily manipulated. They knew I was going to be there before I got there. They had that seat sitting open for me. And they said, well, let's go move over to a table, and there were like some couches in there or couch like ottomans that surround tables in the middle of the floor. And we sat on one of those. And while we were sitting there, they kept getting up and down and changing seats, right? And a lot of what they do is meant to keep me nervous. I had one of their business cards, but I forget what I did with it. There's one guy there named Sasha Goldenson, and I didn't get all. That was the only name that I have from the situation. But one of those guys said he was a co-founder of Zynga. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. He dressed mostly conservatively, like I guess what you might call conservative gay for San Francisco. And he had short hair, but he'd had his voice altered to sound more like a woman's. Okay, and consider yourself lucky if you've never heard that at all. When you have to hear it 2 or 3 times a week, it's pretty disturbing. But that's my best description of him. He had very short hair. He had his voice changed. Said he was a co-founder of Zynga, and he said to me, he leaned over to me at one point and said, "How much do you want to stop doing what you do?" Okay, and I was still pretty kind of just starting to figure out the mind control at this point. He offered me to give me a job and stock options, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to work in a building with people who are doing this to me. So they just kind of blew it off. But that incident came like just the day after, just a few days after. I got some video of some woman who came out of the restroom and Pete's and like turned the other way in reverse direction because she was nervous, I think, because they knew I was shooting video. So, that's it. There's Angelique Fall, and then there was another one with a guy from a Russian social worker or something. I'd have to dig up this business card real quick. Hold on. Anyway, he didn't give me his business card. He wrote his number for me in my moleskin. Oh. I can't remember his name. But there's a picture on my blog of where he wrote his number. So just hold on, I'm going to find this right now instead of doing another clip. And 2 moleskins. Yeah, I just read through where I'd read a book about Bob Hicks, who's a pretty funny comedian, but he's very kind of really, really radical. I know they kind of ran him out of the country, and he ended up in England. All I would say to Bob Hicks is there is nothing ambiguous about will not be infringed. Nothing. And if you say for somebody from my position shouldn't say that, well, my response to that is that a gun is an inanimate object. It doesn't make decisions. And one of the things they're trying to do to me is drive me to an act of violence. Oh, where'd it go? Here it is. His name was Alex Brooks. So, he was one of these guys who knew where I was going to be and sat near me, and I looked him up online, and his LinkedIn page said he was a social worker or a social project manager, I think. And there are a lot of people like Kathleen Cachet involved who are social workers of one sort or another. So that's one of their main covers for socialist brainwashing is their job is that they're social workers. And I think that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. Just some important points about San Francisco and some follow-up points to the last video. And Angelique Fall from Cincinnati, she said to me with a menacing voice, "What are you going to do about it?" You see what I'm doing about it.